Welcome to the Newsmakers Podcast. I'm Billy Hollowell, and this is a show where we go behind the headlines every day to bring you an interview with a pastor, entertainer, politician, or other notable news figure. And this is a show, again, it's daily, but it's based on our weekly TV show, which is also called Newsmakers. You can watch it on the CBN News channel and also on our YouTube page. And on this show, every day, we dive deep. It's a little more longer form with one of the people who you will often see on our Newsmakers show or across the CBN News platforms. On today's Newsmakers, there has been no shortage of controversy over a recent event at Arlington National Cemetery honoring the lives lost during the chaotic Afghanistan U.S. pullout. And today we are having Christy Shamblin, whose daughter-in-law, Marine Sgt. Nicole Gee. She was one of the 13 service members killed during that terror attack in August of 2021 there in Afghanistan. Christy is joining us to share her family's story and to set the record straight on what happened during that Arlington Cemetery event. She specifically will talk about former President Donald Trump's attendance there and her reaction to Vice President Kamala Harris's criticism of Trump for attending. That and more on today's Newsmakers. Here is Christy Shamblin. Christy, I want to thank you for joining me today. I know it has been an incredibly chaotic week, to say the least, and there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the Arlington Cemetery and what happened there. But before we get there, I want to talk about your daughter-in-law, Marine Sgt. Nicole Gee. I think it's incredibly important we start there. She was lost at Abbey Gate, and just tell us a little bit about her for those who don't know.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Nicole was just a superstar in life. She was spectacular. Her heart and her encouraging attitude were contagious. You didn't meet her and not feel better about yourself, and like all part of life. She was just amazing. She and my son were married in 2016, and they were a Marine Corps couple living in North Carolina. I get some feedback sometimes, and I just want to clear up. Her mama, Becky, passed away in 2019. Otherwise, she would be here singing her praises. But, she unfortunately was waiting for Nicole in heaven. Nicole was known for being an encourager. She set records at gyms. Just a few weeks before she went to Kabul, she was at an air base and set a record there. She's still on the wall for setting a weightlifting record there. She would finish PT and run back to the last person on her team coming in and run in with them as an encouragement. She was always just helping people see that they could be the best version of themselves. And we miss her terribly. Our lives will never be the same. As a family, she's got nephews that she was never able to meet. And there's a giant hole in our lives that is never going to be replaced. It doesn't go away. All you do is you learn to live with it. And we don't wish that on anybody. But,
I think I so appreciate you telling us about her and even what you said at the end there, because I think when there's a story like this, that it becomes such a political story, right? And a news story for people, that you lose the fact that these are real human beings and real families. And you have been struggling through the most unimaginable pain as a family now for just over 3 years here. And, there's a lot to unpack here, but what is it like to have a situation where you're watching a presidential debate or you're watching a speech and there's a situation being talked about in that is so personal and so real to you, and yet it is this bigger issue for the entire country to be grappling with? How do you process that, being the person, one of the people so deeply affected by it?
It's very difficult, and it's something you have to learn to do because nobody's born with those kind of abilities or skills. But it's disheartening as well, because what we've seen is people lie, bold-faced lie to the American public. As family members of this tragedy, we know everything we can get our hands on. We've read every report. I've been to every hearing that they'll allow me to be in. And we've seen people lie to the American public. And it's disheartening because they're elected leaders, and these aren't people in uniform. The people in uniform have every ounce of my respect. These are people who wear suits and make a six-figure salary in DC. And it's extremely disheartening. I feel sometimes like we've seen behind the curtain, and you can't unsee that, unfortunately.
Well, and I want to dig into that. And, obviously for those watching and listening, we're talking about Abbey Gate in Afghanistan, the deadly event. And it's been just 3 years. There was just an anniversary event to commemorate what unfolded and remember the lives lost. This was an event, and I want you to fill in any blanks here and correct me, but this was held at Arlington National Cemetery. It was something for the families to come together and to remember the lives of those lost, including Nicole's. And former President Donald Trump, you invited him there, correct? All of the families together invited him.
Correct. Yes.
Initially,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The Hoover family, Kelly Barnett and Darren Hoover, lay a wreath every year on the tomb of the unknown soldier in honor of their son, and we have joined them now for 3 years, and we'll probably do the same for the rest of our lives as well. So they initially invited President Trump as a friend, to lay the wreath with them. And then as a group, we joined in with that, and we were happy to, host the president there.
It's interesting because there are a couple of things here. There's apparently that part of the cemetery you're not supposed to be taking photos. So there was some commentary about that since photos were taken. But the way it's been framed, and you were at this event, obviously, it's been framed as though this were a very political event. It seems there are some who are sort of making it seem that way, that for Trump, it was political and the way that it was photographed. Talk a little bit about the event and from your purview, what you felt was happening with his presence there.
It was beautiful and respectful. We made every effort. We worked with Arlington and the president's team to make every effort to make sure there was as few distractions or disruptions at the cemetery as possible. We even considered school groups that were coming through and made sure that, our movement didn't disrupt any of those activities. It was very respectful, very much what we're hoping for our heroes, for our kids, is that they get the respect and the honor that they died earning. And it was beautiful. After we were done with the wreath laying ceremonies, we went to the grave sites, as we do every year on the anniversary. We spend the day there, and President Trump came with us and laid flowers on each of the graves and spoke to the families. He didn't say, I don't think, more than a handful of words. It wasn't a political event. He didn't talk about himself or his campaign there was no talk about him. He listened to our families tell stories about our loved ones. We kept it as short as we could, so that we could clear up the area for, free access to everybody. But we had permission from Arlington. We crossed all our T's and dotted our I's. We respect Arlington just as much as everybody else. Our loved ones are buried there. That's a place I go to be with Nicole. We would never intentionally disrespect or encourage disrespect. And there was none there that day. We didn't see an altercation. It was all respect and love, honestly.
Well, and I want to come back to that in a minute. One of the things last time you and I spoke, you told me that former President Trump had reached out, that there had been communication. Let's talk about communication with Trump versus communication with the White House and President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, who, they were in office when this event happened, right? They were the ones at the helm when this event happened. And there's lots of discussion and debate around who had the original plans for the pullout and all that. We don't need to get into that. But what has the communication been like when you compare between Trump and the Biden and Harris?
We have had no personal communication from the Biden or Harris, from President Biden or Vice President Harris. We've received, form letters from President Biden, and, we did meet him at Dover. But other than that, zero communication. We've reached out to the White House. We've reached out through official channels. We've reached out through our Congress people. Um, we don't get a response, no response. The first response we got was the social media post from Vice President Harris. And
what was your
upsetting.
reaction? Let's talk about that, because that social media post, was directed at Trump quite a bit. Well, and before we even get to the social media post, this debate about whether or not Biden and Harris were invited to this event. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because it seems their camp is claiming they were not invited to this event at the cemetery.
When I heard them say that, I kind of a little bit laughed and thought maybe we have the wrong contact number, because like the messages have been there, but they have not been returned. I forwarded you this morning a letter that one of our senators sent to the White House inviting them to this event. We didn't invite them to lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier, but we invited them to come with the families and give their respect and honor on the anniversary of their death. We never heard back. We have never heard back.
That's pretty remarkable for a variety of reasons. One other question before I forget, because you spoke, which must have been sort of a surreal experience at the Republican National Convention. Were you extended an invitation? I assume, obviously, you were extended an invitation to do that from the Republicans. Did you get that from the Democratic side as well?
Nope. We've had zero communication from any part of the Democrat, and I'm sad to say that, because I don't think it should be Democrat Republican. We all play for the same team, and it's called the United States of America. And that's lacking right now, I think, in a lot of attitudes.
So coming back to Vice President Harris and that social media post, what was your reaction when you saw the social media post with her responding to this Arlington National Cemetery visit from Trump?
I was so disheartened. At the time, I just really thought, how sad is this? We can't get a return phone call. We can't get a response, even through our Congress people who've reached out and, on our behalf, asking, please meet with these parents, meet with these families, give them some answers, give them some, accountability, even though there won't be any. But and we've just heard nothing back. It's shocking, and to see that post on social media was shocking as well. The fallout from that, I will tell you, is that we're getting death threats. And I don't just mean death threats into social media accounts. I mean to our phones, to our places of business, to our emails. I feel like she put a target on my back.
Why do you think that sparked death threats? I mean, that is, after everything you've been through, to hear that you and your family, and I assume the other families, maybe some of them,
yep,
every one of them.
Every one of them.
How do you even process the pain of going through what you've gone through? And you've been very vocal, really, honoring Nicole, and I think also pushing for accountability and answers, right?
Yes.
And then to have this happen, what has this been like for you?
Just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. It's hard to believe sometimes. Initially I really did think that this was maybe bots and stuff when it was just on social media. I thought, this is not real people. These can't be my fellow American citizens, but it is. Once I started receiving voicemails and phone calls, and they call me by name. It's
what do they say to you? What do they say? What are they saying?
Things I can't repeat here.
Wow.
I mean, everything that you can possibly imagine.
Well, and you also, a number of you, I saw your video, you posted videos, I know Trump shared them, explaining from your perspective what happened at Arlington National Cemetery, just like you said here, what the event was, why that Trump was invited there, that it wasn't, from your view, this big political event. Do you think that people were angry that you did that? I mean, it's so bizarre to me that people would go after families who have gone through what you've gone through. Do you think that video upset people?
I think that when Vice President Harris posted that, that this was disrespectful and that rules were broken, which is not true, that people, got validated that we were somehow evil, I guess, or in the wrong and being disrespectful, which is not the case. I do want to take a minute to say that we have had feedback that some of the other family members who have loved ones buried close to Nicole and Taylor and Ryan are unhappy with the events, and I would like to apologize to those families. That was certainly not our intention, and we would, that hurts me the most because, the Gold Star community is my family now, and to know that somebody in that group is hurt by this is hurtful for me.
I mean, and this is such a flammable issue, and it's such a flammable election. It's probably going to be the most flammable American election we've ever had. And we say that every time, but I think probably this is the case. And this event is not the cemetery event, but what happened in Afghanistan is a big piece of the puzzle for many people who have watched what has unfolded. And there are lots of different views on it. What's your message to those people, not just the ones sending you threats, but maybe them included, but those who didn't maybe understand from your perspective what happened there? What do you want them to know about your heart and the family's hearts in hosting this event and commemorating what unfolded?
What I want people to know is that there's no explaining what it is to try to go to a cemetery and celebrate the life of your loved one who's never going to have a birthday with you again, who's never going to have a Christmas. We don't get to plan baby showers for my daughter-in-law ever. So the best we have is to be able to honor her from our country at her gravesite. And we haven't got that opportunity from anybody else. Former President Trump responds to us. He supports us. And he sat down and taken time to talk to us and not give us fake answers. Nobody has the answers we're looking for, but he at least took the time to sit and talk with us, explain, his perspective. And we just haven't had that same respect from Vice President Harris or President Biden or the administration, to be honest. We also have, Jen Psaki, who's on cable news network, calling us liars. So it comes from the top down. And I think that the American people need to start to focus on that. We have nothing to gain, literally nothing to gain. These people have something to gain, and they're throwing us under the bus, and that's remarkable.
Well, you've had a chance to, just as a final question, you've had a chance to deliver messages directly to former President Trump because, as you said, he's given you the time to do that. If you had Vice President Kamala Harris, who is running against Trump to be commander-in-chief in November, what would you say to her right now? What would your message be if she were in front of you and you finally had that opportunity to speak to her?
I would say, please help us problem solve. Let's make this never happen again, so that the Afghanistan exit doesn't become the next humanitarian rescue that we do. We don't need another Saigon or another Afghanistan. People falling off of planes or being rescued from rooftops isn't the American way, and we need to do better. And it would be great if we could get help from Vice President Harris to make that happen.
Well, Christy, as always, I really appreciate you taking the time and just speaking with us. I know it's not easy to talk about any of these things from Nicole. That's the biggest piece, right down the line. And yet you have joined us repeatedly to do that. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
That's all for today's Newsmakers podcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode of the show, and also head over to the CBN News YouTube channel and the CBN News channel to watch Newsmakers every week. We'll see you soon.